Day 5 of the September 96 7-day retreat in Springwater. The singing, humming, fog. Lit up. Is it all here? The humming, the fogging, the breathing, the twittering. Physical body sensing, thoughts, imagery. Is it all here? This one moment. This one moment of listening awareness. People mention the stream of thoughts, maybe abating at times, falling silent for moments, and then picking up again, even on day 5. The even is a quote, I didn't put that in. Because it implies, doesn't it, some subtle criticism as though on this day 5 it shouldn't really be there anymore. So let's look at it freshly. This instant of humming, buzzing. Our habitual and educated way of listening is listening to things, people, voices, sounds. And of course here, as we said on the very first day, listening is not just with the ears. This whole organism, listening, attending. So is it this habitual attending to what? Sometimes someone says, what should I attend to first with all this multitude of stuff? The breath, or the birds, or the wind, or the pain in the legs? That is thought controlling in its habitual way. This first, then that. This has higher priority. And that sort of cuts us up and cuts up the universe as thought rolls on in its linear fashion, one thing after another. That's how it thinks things are happening, because this is the only way it can think. One thought after another. So is it possible to listen radically differently, not two things, but just listen. Listen. Ever more subtly, quietly, motionlessly, listening and allowing whatever is there to be there or not to be there, which we commonly say to come and go. But in this quiet, motionless listening, even coming and going is a misleading thought. There's only what's here. And it doesn't need to be listened to, it's here. As the listening is here. Not my listening or your listening. That needs thought again to identify with me here as a body, as a story, as an image. And you there as all of your bodies and stories and images. That's thought creating its misleading world. So can there be listening without identification with this body and this story? And if identification is taking place and is becoming transparent, it's just another hum of the universe. Not mine or yours. Does that seem too far out? Too radical? It's not said as a theoretical proposition thrown out. It's what's actually happening. Quiet listening without reference point to me or you. And humming and twittering and breathing. I'm buzzing. That marvelous light in the midst of fog is there, without any fuss or bother. The day before yesterday, the last group that was held in the evening, someone started out by saying, a memory came up, suddenly bubbling up, of something maybe 10, 12 years ago, who knows? Who knows how long ago? And this memory bubbling up right in the midst of the sense of no time. So what is time? Sort of the opening question. What is time? And there seemed sufficient interest in the group to keep it up for an hour of time. Actually, if I recall right, the next person said time is that black clock in the middle of our circle, reminding me that we have an hour. So the clock was removed. By removing the clock from the floor, is there the sense of no time? And what is the sense of no time? Just as important a co-question to what is time. I'm hoping there's sufficient interest here so we can go into this. There was then, and groups usually represent all of us. In wondering, what is time, which is such a heavy burden? One of its aspects that we seem to carry. It is also something we take utterly, totally for granted unless we have begun to question it. So that it may even seem nonsensical. Of course there's time. We all were babies and now we're different ages. We're growing older every minute. Is that the proof that there is time? Or does it mean that out of egg and sperm in mysterious ways, and that's not the beginning. Egg and sperm is not the beginning. What led up to those, it's not right now in my memory bank to be dragged up. So, egg and sperm getting together, and eventually, after 9 months' time, a baby emerging. We had the visit of a baby and her mother the other day. It is forever miraculous to see such a tiny creature, because it wasn't the tiniest baby, it was quite sturdy. Everything there, including the tiny toenails and fingernails. And the amazing variegated musculature of the face when smile went in time into cry. One could see it coming. And the softness of the skin. From then on, it's downhill all the way. Actually, we may say, no, this baby is going to unfold, develop, grow, make progress in time. Mature, become teenager, mother. Maybe, maybe not. Grow older, and if not dying before old age, noting the body growing older. That's how we speak. And we mean something very definite with it. The skin no longer the baby skin. Aches and pains manifesting. Well, the whole process. Those of us who are getting older know about it, although everybody is getting older. And this happens, and this has happened for millennia, hundreds, thousands, millions, billions of years. Forms coming, unfolding and going, coming, unfolding and going. if we had the same process of photography as we have developed so magnificently for the unfolding of one flower, where it's really one moment of nowness, the unfolding of the petals, and the defolding or enfolding. With this kind of way of looking, which is a different speed of looking, it doesn't seem so much a factor of time. There's just unfolding and defolding going on all the time, right now. So, to get at it more concretely, from where we are right now, what is the sense of time? What I was yesterday, at the beginning of the retreat, or wherever memory hooks in or brings up imagery, remembered events from childhood. It takes memory, doesn't it, to get that sense of time. Remembering what things were. Recently I looked at a picture of this building before there was any landscaping. And one could say time and people have dealt kindly with this building by putting plants around, digging borders, digging beds, planting flowering things. You could say it has changed with time, but it needs memory to make that statement. Without memory, this place is always just what it is. Nothing different, nothing that could be or nothing that was. That's memory kicking in, thought and creative fantasy, imagining what it will be in the future. And there are people who are imagining what this place could be in the future, maybe expanding it. Some people feel there should be a master plan on how to arrange maybe future cabins or staff housing. More bedrooms. It takes imagination, thinking, to come up with, in imagination, the so-called future. Do we see that? Is that even boring? Or is one looking at this as this mind produces it? Questioning the reality of time that we have believed in, or are still believing in, as a very important factor in our life. What I was, what I will be. To put it in the most condensed form. Those thoughts with their implied emotions of fear or joyful anticipation, joyful memory or fearful anticipation. Does that make for the sense of existing in time? Someone in the meeting brought up, well, the very fact of motion implies time. Moving about, gesticulating with the arms, does that imply time? Or you could say the sound of traffic may imply, does it imply time? The time it takes to get from 15 or 15A to Hemlock? If there is such a place as Hemlock Lake. Again, it calls upon the aid of thought and imagination. Because experiment with it. It's one of the most beautiful experiments because it also has this deeply silencing quality to it. Whether there can be a listening to a sound without the thought, where is it coming from and where is it going? Even though it seems, just like we earlier in the retreat talked about judgment, it seems as though it's impossible to hear something without knowing where it comes from and following it sort of to where it's going. And then it fades out, so thought says it's gone away. Or it's coming back, or something else is coming and will be going. Find out whether there can be listening without that conditioned thinking, putting a spin on it. You could say, now wait a minute, the car is going from here to there. Right? We're not talking about that right now. We're just talking about a quality of timeless listening, which may be our true home. Which reminds me of two Zen stories. The one about the geese, maybe a lot of people have heard it. A teacher and disciple walking across the field and wild geese flying overhead. We get it here too. Partly because we have a group of geese living nearby, and they're not all going south yet. They're just living there on that lawn. And yet thought already said, so early? Are they already leaving? So these geese whack, 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 whack. And the teacher asking the disciple, what is this? And the disciple responding, these are wild geese. The next question, where are they going? And the response, they have flown away. Whereupon the teacher, in typical Zen fashion, tweaks the student's nose and he cries out in pain and had the great awakening. Awakening to what? The stories never say that because you're supposed to find this out yourself. Maybe even without someone tweaking your nose. But from looking oneself and understanding, maybe, one may say, there was a waking up to that this body, with its story reference and its whole knowledge about geese and flying and east and west, north and south, that is not the whole thing, that can indeed go into abeyance, and then there's a different listening, a different being, which is not personal and not referenced to time and space as learned by the mind and stored someplace there in a memory bank in the brain. That there is a different listening which is free from that conditioning, free from self-reference, and therefore at one, undivided, in touch, and maybe even compassionate for what binds us and holds us in bondage. The other story comes to mind in this connection. It's not really a story, it's just a statement by Dogen, a Japanese Zen teacher, who said, "Firewood does not turn into ashes." Firewood doesn't turn into ashes. I've mentioned it quite a number of times because it was very, it grabbed me. Because it did not make any sense. We were doing a lot of camping at the time. Every morning scraping out these beautiful white ashes that came from burning the logs the last evening and spreading them into the outhouse. It was not really an outhouse, it was just, it had no walls, outhouse without walls. Just the trees around and a winding ravine. We called it Inspiration Point. That's where the white ashes went that came from the logs, which we cut during the day. And yet, see, this is the neat thing about hearing something that one doesn't understand. It may not grab one, and then that's that. But if it has some kind of a hook to it, maybe even an annoyance, but one can't let it go. One thinks it's way out, way off. And yet one can't forget about it. Then one may, sooner or later, try to investigate it, test it out. And the best way of testing that particular one out is to sit in front of a fireplace and watch the logs. We have, in the California retreat, there is a room which is called the pillow room because it abounds with big and small pillows. Not Zen pillows, but comfort pillows. And a fireplace, and we're allowed to make a fire in there. And usually people sit in there, particularly in the evening. I think that's the only time it's allowed to make a fire, and watch the fire. Not that I don't know even if I've ever brought this Dogen statement up there. And quite a number of people have told me, I'm not going in that pillow room anymore, it's too seductive. I think all of us know the so-called seductiveness of sitting in front of a fireplace and watching the fire and dreaming. Or just the fascination with what is going on, but maybe not that extra listening, looking, attending, which is not totally sucked into the fascination of it, but is aware of it. And then maybe a statement like this offering itself for examination. What does it mean? Firewood, not turning into ashes. And that examination does not need the dreaming mind. It's clear. To look, dreams are in the way. And if that's seen, if that's transparent, they may not disturb. They may come and go, but here is wondering, looking, attending, without knowing the answer. One is not out to disprove or to prove, but to find out. in being there with a log. At the beginning of it, if it's wet, the smoke coming out. Eventually catching on fire. The story, the way it's told, brings in the element of time, but the looking now doesn't need that element of time at all. If thought quiets down about past and future, there's only the smoking log. The log slowly catching fire. No, slowly is too much. See, reporting is difficult without time, because the whole report is time. Takes a while to get the story across. The red-hot log, the whitening log, the crumbling log, collapsing log, whiteness on the log, whiteness underneath and around the log, the glowing log. It's always just this. Only memory, which is felt to be of a different mode, says, well, a while ago, what did it really look like? And it takes a moment, maybe an infinitesimal moment, to remember, oh, it looked like that. Or maybe at this moment the memory won't even appear. Because now there's presence with what is, without time. So, is our whole life of remembrances and anticipations, this whole life of me-ness, I-ness, you-ness, is that the movement of thought in time? Without that element of time carried by thinking and remembering, would there be I-ness in the traditional way, habitual sense? That is always connected with what I am and what I was and what I will be, isn't it? Remembering sitting years ago in the Zendo in Rochester, late into the night, as one was gently or not so gently pushed to do. Not physically. Pressure about what hits the ambitious person most. What a good Zen student does is sit late into the night, maybe doesn't go to sleep at all. So here one finds oneself sitting late at night, even though every bone in the body aches. Great desire for lying down. Actually, this is where it occurred for the first time to question what is tiredness experientially, directly, because it was so unbearable. And by getting out of this unbearableness into what is it? I don't mean repeating this as a mantra, but a wondering, not taking the condition for granted, not sticking with the word tiredness, and therefore with all the associations and remembered incidents of tiredness, but stepping out of that network of knowing, labeling, associating knowing, into what is going on right now. With which this movement of tiredness calmed down. Not always. At times it was too much and then one got up and went to bed. But at times it would sort of lift and lighten And then finding that in sitting there quietly, every once in a while, quite rhythmically, the brain would kick in saying, how am I doing? Am I getting someplace? And with anything else, that's the beauty of it. If it becomes transparent, if it becomes transparently aware that there is this question, this tape, how am I doing? Am I doing all right? Or am I all right? Then wondering whether that has to continue, whether that is really needed to check whether one is all right or whether one is getting someplace. And at one point the realization that was not needed, even though it is our constant companion, normally, checking in on how we are doing, etc. All kind of different questions like this. And yet in this sitting, quietly, it was realized one didn't have to know how one was doing, how one was, or what one was, or where one was going. It was quite all right to sit in darkness. In the darkness of not knowing, which is an open, seamless space. Of no time. The rumbling, the motoring, the humming, heart beating and breath. It's there, but it needn't be known or owned or disowned. Looking on the watch, it says it's time to end here for today.